Let us begin with a question that may seem impossibly large, but which deserves your honest attention. What if everything you see, every mountain, every star, every face you have ever loved, is not what it appears to be? What if the solid world, with all its weight and permanence, is actually something more like a dream? Not a random dream, not a meaningless hallucination, but the deliberate, ongoing thought of a mind so vast that your own awareness is simply one ripple within it. This is not poetry. This is not wishful thinking. This is a complete inversion of how most of us have been taught to understand reality. And it comes from one of the most unusual thinkers of the 20th century. A man who claimed that the universe revealed itself to him not through equations or experiments, but through direct illumination. His name was Walter Russell. And what he saw, or what he says he saw, is a vision of existence so radical, so beautiful, and so practically demanding that it deserves your full attention, not because you must believe it, but because engaging with it may change how you see everything. So settle in, let this teaching unfold at its own pace, and see if, by the end, you recognize something you have always known, but perhaps never had words for. Part 1. The Only Reality. Let's begin at the foundation. Russell makes a claim that sounds almost too simple to be profound. He says, there is no universe apart from mind. There is no out there separate from the consciousness that perceives it. There is only God, and God is mind. And everything we call creation is simply that mind thinking. Now, pause with that for a moment, because we are so accustomed to believing that the world exists independently of us. We assume that if every conscious being vanished tomorrow, the mountains would still stand, the stars would still burn, the atoms would still spin. Russell says no. He says that what we call the physical universe is not a thing at all. It is a process, a continuous, rhythmic act of thinking happening within one infinite awareness. And here is the key. You are not separate from that awareness. You're not a tiny creature looking up at a vast cosmos that ignores you. You're a localized expression of the same mind that dreams galaxies into being. When you think, truly think, from the depths of your being, you are participating in the same creative act that holds the stars in place. This is not metaphor. This is, in Russell's view, the literal structure of existence. So what is this mind made of? What is its substance? Russell says, light. Not the light you see with your eyes. That is already a secondary phenomenon, a kind of stepping down of something more fundamental. The true light is the primordial medium of consciousness itself. It is the body of God, if God can be said to have a body. And everything, every rock, every cloud, every thought you have ever had is simply light in motion. Matter, in this view, is frozen light. Crystallized thought, a temporary pattern held in place by the ongoing attention of mind. When that attention shifts, the pattern dissolves back into the stillness from which it came. Think of it this way. Imagine a book, say a great novel that has moved you deeply. The physical book is made of paper and ink. But the story, the meaning, the world that lives in your imagination when you read it, that is not made of paper. The paper is simply the medium through which the idea expresses itself. Russell is saying that the entire physical universe is like that ink and paper. It is real in a sense. You can touch it, measure it, stub your toe on it, but it is not the reality. It is the visible expression of an invisible thought. And here is where it becomes personal. You are not your body. Your body is light arranged into a particular pattern by the thinking of mind. It is a temporary expression, a costume, a vehicle. The you that is aware of reading these words, that is closer to the real you. And even that awareness is not the deepest truth. The deepest truth is the stillness from which awareness arises. Part 2. The Mechanics of Illusion. Now we enter the mechanics. How does one undivided mind create the appearance of a universe filled with separate things? Russell's answer is elegant: through motion. Specifically through a particular kind of motion that he calls thinking. Thinking, in Russell's system, is not what happens in your brain. Your brain is a secondary effect. True thinking is an electrical process, a division of the stillness of mind into two opposing forces. You might call them action and reaction, push and pull, compression and expansion. These two forces are not separate substances. They are the same substance moving in opposite directions. Imagine a still pond. Now imagine dropping a stone into it. The stillness is divided into waves, some moving outward, some reflecting back. The waves are real in the sense that you can see them, photograph them, measure them. But they are not separate from the water. They are the water in motion. Russell says the universe is like that pond. Mind is the water. Thinking is the stone. And everything we call matter, everything we call energy, is simply the pattern of waves created by that original disturbance. And here is something crucial. The motion itself is an illusion. Not in the sense that it doesn't happen, but in the sense that it has no independent existence. The only stable thing is the stillness between the waves, what Russell calls the inertial plane. Picture a tug of war where both teams are perfectly matched. The rope doesn't move, but there is tremendous tension in that stillness. Russell says the universe is held together by exactly that kind of balanced tension. The visible world, the world of motion and change, is like the trembling of the rope, but the power comes from the stillness. This has profound implications for how you live. Most of us are addicted to motion. We want to do, to achieve, to accumulate, to solve. We believe that power lies in action. Russell is saying that the deepest power lies in stillness, in the inertial center from which all action arises and to which all action returns. When you are exhausted and scattered, overwhelmed, you have lost touch with that center. You have become identified with the waves rather than the water. Contemplative practice, in this view, is simply returning to the stillness, not as an escape from life, but as the source of life. Part 3. The binary heartbeat. Now we come to what Russell calls the sex principle. And here we must be careful, because he's not talking about gender in the social sense. He's talking about the fundamental polarity that makes existence possible. Remember, mind is one. But to create, to think, it must appear to divide itself. It must pretend to be two. Russell calls these two forces the male and the female principles. You could also call them positive and negative, electric and magnetic, centripetal and centrifugal. The names don't matter. What matters is understanding what they do. The male force, the electric, compressive, generating force, gathers, concentrates, and builds form. It is the energy that takes scattered light and condenses it into matter. It is the inward pulling power that creates suns and atoms and bodies. The female force, the magnetic, expansive, radiating force, releases, dissolves, and returns form to formlessness. It is the energy that takes dense matter and disperses it back into light. It is the outward flowing power that allows things to rest, to die, to be reborn. Neither force is superior to the other. Both are equally necessary. Creation is the dance between them, the eternal rhythm of winding up and unwinding, generating and radiating, concentrating and releasing. And here is something beautiful. Reproduction is not just a biological phenomenon, it is a universal law. Every idea seeks to reproduce itself. Every thought wants to extend itself through time and space. When you have a creative insight and feel compelled to share it, you are participating in this cosmic reproduction. When you fall in love and feel the urge to merge with another person, You are enacting the same principle that drives galaxies to form. When you write a book or build a company or raise a child, you are expressing the universe's fundamental desire to extend its thinking beyond any single point. And, this is crucial, energy does not travel. This sounds counterintuitive. We think of light moving from the sun to our eyes, of sound moving from a speaker to our ears. But Russell says this is an illusion. What actually happens is reproduction. Each point in space reproduces the pattern of the previous point, like a wave of dominoes falling, like an echo rippling through a canyon. This means there is no separation, there is no distance. The light that seems to come from a star millions of light years away is not something that traveled to you. It is something that reproduced itself, point by point, until it reached your eye. And you, in receiving it, are participating in that reproduction. You are not a passive observer. You are a co-creator of the light you see. Part 4. The architecture of limitation. Now we must grapple with something that sounds paradoxical. Russell says the universe is finite, it has limits. It follows precise mathematical laws. Every dimension, mass, color, tone, position, is locked into a specific octave structure, like the notes on a piano. And yet, this finite universe is an expression of an infinite mind. How can that be? Think of it this way. A great composer has infinite musical possibility available to them. They can imagine any melody, any harmony, any rhythm. But when they sit down to write a symphony, they must choose. They must limit themselves to specific notes, specific instruments, specific durations. The symphony is finite. It begins, it unfolds, it ends. But the musical imagination from which it arose is not finite. Russell says the universe is God's symphony. It is a deliberate, structured, bounded expression of boundless consciousness. The laws of physics are not arbitrary constraints imposed from outside. They are the self-chosen forms through which mind expresses itself. They are the grammar of the cosmic language. And here is the law that Russell considers most fundamental, the law of oneness. He phrases it like this: everything that is of everything else that is. This is not a poetic sentiment. This is, in his view, the deepest physics. There is no separation anywhere in the universe. Every atom contains the pattern of every other atom. Every star carries the signature of every other star. Every human being is literally, physically, energetically connected to every other human being. When you look into another person's eyes, you're looking into a mirror. When you harm another, you harm yourself. When you love another, you love yourself. Not as a moral teaching imposed from outside, but as the simple recognition of how reality is structured. This has enormous practical implications. It means that selfishness is not just ethically wrong, it is cosmically confused. It is like your left hand declaring war on your right hand. It means that genuine service to others is not sacrifice. It is self-realization. It means that the boundaries you draw between yourself and the world are useful conventions, but they are not ultimately real. Part 5. The inner mind. Now we come to what may be the most important teaching. Russell draws a sharp distinction between what he calls the outer mind and the inner mind. The outer mind is the mind you are most familiar with. It is the mind that processes sensory information, reasons through problems, remembers the past, and plans for the future. It is the mind that operates through your brain. It is extraordinarily useful. It allows you to navigate the physical world, to communicate with other beings, to learn from experience. But the outer mind has a fatal limitation. It can only know effects. It can only perceive the waves, never the water. It can study the universe in exquisite detail, build elegant theories, make accurate predictions, and still miss the essential reality entirely. Because the essential reality is not an effect, It is the cause, and the cause is not available to the senses. The inner mind, by contrast, is your direct connection to the source. It is the part of you that is not separate from God. It does not acquire knowledge from outside. It recognizes knowledge that is already present within. It does not reason toward truth. It directly perceives truth. Russell calls this inner knowing illumination, and he claims that what we call genius is simply the ability to access it. The great artists, the great scientists, the great mystics, they are not people who have accumulated more information than others. They are people who have learned to quiet the outer mind and listen to the inner mind. And here is the radical claim: you can do this too. Not through special training, as not through years of study, not through divine favor, simply through the decision to turn your attention inward and become still. Part 6. The invitation. So what does all this mean for you, sitting here, listening to these words? It means that you are not what you think you are. You are not a biological accident on a cosmic speck. You are not a brief flicker of consciousness that will be extinguished at death. You are the universal mind, temporarily focused through a particular pattern of light, experiencing itself through a particular set of senses, thinking its thoughts through a particular brain. The limitations you feel, the sense of being small, of being separate, and of being lost in a vast and indifferent universe, these are real experiences, but they are experiences of illusion. They are what it feels like to believe the evidence of the outer senses, and you can wake up from them, not all at once, not through a single insight, but through a gradual, patient turning of attention from the outer to the inner, through the practice of stillness, through the willingness to question what you have always assumed to be true. Russell offers 3 questions that can guide this turning. I offer them to you now, not as homework, but as invitations. First, where in your life are you over-generating and under-radiating? Where are you accumulating and holding on, stressing, building, without the corresponding release, giving, dissolving, resting? The universe runs on rhythmic balance. If you are exhausted, anxious, burned out, it may be because you have forgotten the other half of the cycle. Second, can you look at a physical object, a tree, a cup, a person, and shift your perception from seeing a solid thing to seeing a temporary pattern of light held together by thought? This is not a denial of the object's reality. It is a deepening of your understanding of what reality is. Third, what answer are you currently seeking outside yourself that you could find by becoming still and listening within? Not all answers live inside you. The outer world has much to teach, but the deepest answers, the ones that concern who you are and why you are here and what matters most, these cannot be found through more information. They can only be recognized through inner knowing. Closing. Walter Russell's vision is not easy to accept. It contradicts most of what we have been taught about the nature of things. It asks us to believe that the solid world is a kind of mirage, that our deepest self is not our body or even our personality, that we have access to infinite knowledge if we would only learn to listen. And yet, there is something in it that rings true. Something that the mystics of every tradition have pointed toward. Something that the deepest moments of your own life have hinted at. Those moments of profound clarity when the boundaries between self and world seem to dissolve. Those moments of creative flow when ideas seem to arrive from somewhere beyond your conscious mind. Those moments of love when you recognized another being as somehow identical with yourself. What if those moments are not anomalies? What if they are glimpses of how things actually are? I do not ask you to believe this teaching. I ask you only to consider it, to let it work on you, to see if, in the stillness of your own mind, something in you responds. Because the universe is not a machine that you observe from outside. It is a thought that you participate in from within. And the thinker is you. Rest now. Let these ideas settle, and when you are ready, return to the stillness from which all thinking arises. That stillness is waiting for you. It has always been waiting. It is, in the end, the only thing that is truly real. End of teaching.